Hi everyone. I haven't filmed in a long while, just life. Also, I haven't filmed a wrap up in a good while, so I have read quite a bit over the past couple of months. So I just wanted to do some quick mini fire reviews of all the books that I read over the past while. I think I have 11 books to talk about. The one is part of a series, so I might talk about them together, so 10 altogether really. I just did an unhaul, so that's why there's this big gap here in my bookshelves. They will be filled up soon, I'm very sure. I will film an unhaul soon as well. I just want to get everything listed on Depop and Vinted first before I film maybe. But yeah, unhaul is coming. Just looking at this stack now, I actually really enjoyed a lot of these books. I think a lot of them were very, very strong. I think I'll go in reading order. So the first one I read was Wayward by Amelia Hart. I bought this book because it was a Goodreads winner. I think it was like the best debut book for 1 year. I can't remember what year. This came out in 2023, that's it. This was a really cool historical fiction book. So you have 3 points of view in this story and obviously 3 main characters. Is it Alda, I think, from the 1600s. You have Violet, I think, which is in the 1940s. And then you have Kate from 2019, so kind of modern day. So I actually listened to this on audiobook and I actually would recommend that. I did enjoy the audiobook for this, and there was 3 different narrators for each character. So you've Kate in 2019. She actually flees this really abusive relationship that she's in, and she goes to the other side of the country in England to a cottage that she's inherited by her great aunt. And her great aunt is Violet, so you get Violet's point of view. Violet grows up in this like really aristocratic family, like very well off. Violet loves being in nature. She cares more about that rather than being like a proper young lady at the time. Her mother died under suspicious circumstances, and she has this kind of volatile relationship with her dad, and kind of something horrible happens to her. And then you have Alda, which is the 1600s, and she's actually on trial for witchcraft. So yeah, I really loved how each story like interconnected. I really love when stories do that very well, how characters are connected over time or little plot lines that put everyone together. I really enjoy when that happens, and I think this was really well done. I think I gave this 4 stars. I did really enjoy it. I think where it maybe knocked a star for me was probably where it was that very kind of heavy-handed men are evil and woman has to overcome oppression. Maybe leaned on the heavy-handedness with that, but still, I thought it was really cool. This starts off with an excerpt from Macbeth, which is where you get the word wayward, which has turned now to the word weird. So I just thought that was cool. I didn't know that. Really well written, really well narrated if you go the audiobook route. Really cool historical fiction book and really good interconnected story. So really good stuff. I would definitely check out this author again. Maybe double check the trigger warnings because there are some very hard things that are talked about in here. But yeah, really enjoyed it. The next one I read is My Name Is Maame, and it's by Jessica George. Sometimes this book is just called Maame. Maybe in the US it's just called that. Here in Ireland this is the version that you get. This was really heartfelt. I really loved it. Again, this was a 4-star, kind of a high 4-star, not quite the 5, but I did really enjoy it. Basically, I think the author wrote about her own life. As far as I'm aware, I think it's very much based on Jessica George's own life, and you can feel that in this book because it feels so human. All the characters in this feel very real, and this had a very good balance of light-hearted humor and then very heavy topics as well. So you have Maddie, the main character, and she more or less lives at home with her father, and her father needs full-time care. He's unable to really communicate with her at the moment. Her mum ends up going back to Africa, I think to Ghana, looking after a hotel that she runs, and then she kind of has an absent brother, so it ends up being put on Maddie to look after her father. And because of this, her life is very much kind of on hold. She's not really going out with her friends, she's not really dating, she's kind of stuck in a dead-end job. But her mum turns around and says, I'm coming home, I'll look after your father, you go live your life, basically. So it's about Maddie like finding new jobs that she likes, going on dates, making friends, moving in with people her own age, which she hasn't really done. I loved Maddie as a character. She's kind of naive in an endearing way, because it was a bit like, oh, I feel like I'm reading about an 18-year-old rather than a 25-year-old with some of the things that she was like experiencing for the first time. But it's just very human, very real. It deals with like heavier topics like mental health, grief, identifying with your culture, friendships and dating in your 20s, what it means to be happy, all these things. So such a good, solid book. So I think if you're looking for something feel good or just very human, I think this is a great book to pick up. I think there was some parts in this book that I felt were a little bit unbelievable in places, like maybe some of the relationship dynamics. Ultimately, really, really, really loved this book. So definitely highly recommend. Oh, I then, I read Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I don't have a physical copy of this because I read it on my Kindle. All my Hunger Games books are paperback, so I'm going to buy it next year when it comes out in the standard paperback. But my gosh, did I love this book. I loved it. It was so good. I think I didn't enjoy it as much as The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I think I liked that slightly more. I think because it was like so different, because it's from the villain's point of view, it's from the capital's point of view, where this book is about Haymitch. So if you are aware of the Hunger Games books and movies, Haymitch is the kind of OG District 12 winner, and he's the alcoholic struggling mentor to Katniss and Peeta in the first book and movie. So it's about his Hunger Games and how he won his games. So you get a snippet, I think, in Mockingjay. I think you get like a little paragraph of what happened to Haymitch and why he is the way he is, but this book obviously is describing what happened. It reminded me so much of Catching Fire. Haymitch does have kind of a goal to nearly destroy the games as much as he can. It's also a quarter quell as well, an extra special games like Catching Fire. You have a lot of like Easter eggs and returning characters. You have a lot of the characters that were in the original Hunger Games trilogy in this book, which was so good. I loved all the callbacks to the original trilogy and Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. You definitely do need to read that first before you read this, I do think. So yeah, you have 16-year-old Haymitch. He has a girlfriend that he's really in love with. He's obviously reaped into the Hunger Games. And with this quarter quell, it's double the amount of contestants. There's 48 contestants. It's such a sadistic game. I think like the evilness of the games was really highlighted in this book. I would say even more so than the original trilogy. I think it was because you see a little bit more behind the curtain and specifically the propaganda around the games. I feel like even the tournament itself, it was set in this like beautiful springtime meadow with this beautiful mountain. But of course it's deadly, so it was very good and heartbreaking. It was so interesting to see Haymitch be this really strong leadership character. He's very courageous, very brave, but you just see how the capital like totally break him, and you see why he becomes the way he becomes in Katniss's games then years later. So it was really good character development book, really good plotting, such a good book for the fans of the series. I think it just did it justice. I do believe that I think Suzanne Collins is potentially releasing a trilogy. So it is Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, focusing on snow. You've this one which really calls back to Catching Fire, and apparently the third book might be Plutarch, might be his story, so that might be more capital focused as well if that happens. I know that's only a theory right now, but I can see her doing that, how each of these three books will now reflect the original trilogy. I'm just so happy they're happening. I think it's very poignant for this time as well, especially like around propaganda. Something that's really hitting me as well is the amount of surveillance that is in the Hunger Games. I think that really hit me reading Sunrise on the Reaping. Good dystopian novel will say things about our current world, about where things can go, and the Hunger Games does that. I do think like in the future the Hunger Games will be classics. When the movie comes out next year, I'm going to be there at the like second it releases at like the midnight showing. I can't wait. So of course 5 stars. I thought I would cry. I actually didn't. I think because I knew it would be hard. I think I cry when I don't expect things to be sad, but I knew this would be, so I think I was a bit like But I think constantly reading this book I was like just looked miserable. But it was just so well done. And I actually moved on then to read The Hunger Games, the original book. Not immediately, I did have a gap of time, but I did really want to get back into reading the original trilogy. So yeah, I obviously did read these before. I read them when they came out, back when they were super popular. Yeah, 2008, 2009, whenever these were out. I remember when I read them back when I was a teenager, and I do remember this being my favourite one. I think I forgot how sassy Katniss is, I think. And I was like, oh, actually, Jennifer Lawrence was a perfect casting for Katniss, I think. I think she does really encapsulate Katniss very, very well. But obviously, this is the OG book. This is the 74th Hunger Games, where 2 teenagers from each district, and there's 12 districts of Panem, which used to be the United States, they're offered up as tributes to compete in these Hunger Games. So a fight to the death. The victor has riches for the rest of their lives. But the Capitol put these on basically to kind of keep everyone in control, and there's a big talk on surveillance and control in these books. So you just follow Katniss, you kind of see how life is in District 12, which is actually kind of the poorest of the districts, and you see her through the games as well. She's reaped with a guy called Peter Malark. She has her mum and sister back home as well. Katniss herself is actually very good at survival because they are more or less starving all the time in District 12, and she's become very good at hunting with bow and arrow. But just, yeah, one of the best YA books you could ever pick up. Just so good, will be classics in the future. Such a good dystopian novel. So another audiobook I listened to was The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. So this is Kelly Bishop's memoir. I actually really enjoyed this. I find these hard to rate because it's like it's someone's life, but I think I did give it a 4-star on Goodreads. She's obviously most famous for being part of the chorus line in Broadway and for being Emily Gilmore in the Gilmore Girls show, the mother of Lorelai and the grandmother to Rory. What I really liked about this is she actually narrates it herself as well, so I did really enjoy that. And I really liked the style of, especially at the beginning, where it kind of started with her time in Broadway, especially with a chorus line and how that came together. It actually goes back then to how she began dancing. So she was actually primarily more of a dancer before being an actress. So I think she started with ballet, went into acting, got her big break on Broadway, won her Tony Award, and then she talks about her various projects and stuff. I had no idea she was in Dirty Dancing. I totally forgot. She's the mother in that too, I think. So I did think actually when I finished this, I was like, oh, if you're an actor, I think specifically, and maybe a dancer too, I think you would really, really enjoy this because it had a lot of insights into the industry. It was really cool how you can see how Gilmore Girls was such a success. Like, you can tell by how well done it was, how well written it was, how well produced it was, just from one of the actors like Kelly Bishop themselves talking about it. So I just thought that was so cool. Her memoir as well is also a lot about her romantic relationships, kind of various boyfriends she had and her first husband, where that ended kind of badly. I love her talking about her second husband. I think he was a news broadcaster. You can just tell that they were so in love, and it was just lovely hearing her talk about him. And I think it was just like such a nice story to hear about this lovely love story she had. And she obviously had some very bad relationships too, so it was really cool to see that she had something so strong like that. I found it maybe slow in some places, especially when she just went from kind of like, I did this project and then I did this project and then I did this project, but that is her life. It was project to project to project. That is what it is. And obviously kind of the really exciting ones like Gilmore Girls and like Dirty Dancing kind of stand out a bit more because they're so well known. Generally a very good audiobook. I thought she did really well narrating it. I think she's quite witty. I love how, I think it was the writer of Gilmore Girls, she did the prologue and introduction, and how she encouraged Kelly to write her own memoir. But yeah, she does have a very fascinating story. So yeah, definitely if you're interested in the acting world, I think a very good audiobook to listen to. I then finally finished The Poppy War. So this is by R.F. Kuang. I put it down to read other things, and then I was like, I need to finish this off, and I'm so glad I did. I did that a lot in 2024. I would start books, put them down and read something else. That was actually one of my New Year's resolutions, was not to do that anymore, and I haven't, and I've been enjoying it. I've been finishing books. So this is about Rin, and this story is basically a fantasy China called Nikan, and she actually gets in just by studying super hard and working really hard into this really elite military academy. She's from a poor province. She's actually a orphan that was taken in, so she doesn't come from money or anything like that. So she is kind of looked down upon a little bit in Soundgarde at the academy. When she gets there, she does make some friends, but she also has a lot of rivals as well. She has some very, very tough teachers as well, and one that's very, very frustrating. This is a fantasy book as well, so Rin does tap into like a power that she has, and one of her professors helps her to do that. So yeah, this book is definitely very much in two halves. The Empire is on brink of war and they're training to be soldiers, and then second half is more about the war itself. So you kind of have the half of in school and half the country at war. The tonal shift of the book is, I think, on purpose very drastic, because obviously it's like, yeah, real life was happening and then they're in war. So that was really, really interesting and very, I suppose, very real in a way of how war can just affect life. So yeah, definitely the first half of this, you know, it's like teenagers in school learning to be soldiers, and then the second half is this very, very dark, very vivid war story. So just do bear that in mind. It's very graphic, very hard things happening in this. So I did really enjoy it, and I do want to keep going with the next two books in the trilogy. I do think Kwong is a very good writer. I gave this 4 stars, by the way. I did really enjoy it, but definitely had its pitfalls as well. Sometimes I couldn't understand the tone sometimes. The dialogue is funny because you're in ancient China, but the dialogue is so modern that it was nearly like Mulan a little bit in my head. But then the subject matter is so dark that it's not really like that. So sometimes maybe like the age demographic or target audience in general, or even genre of the book, I feel like is a little bit all over the place. So I'm not quite sure who Kwong was exactly targeting with releasing this, because for a YA book it's very dark, but then for an adult book it has like very YA maybe themes, typical characters, would you say? Yeah, and I thought some scenes were a bit random, but overall a very, very, very good action-packed book. I think if you like action, if you like war stories, if you like character development, I thought the character development was pretty good in this. Not the best, but I think it was pretty good. Usually I do like a tonal shift of like funny and heavy, but I just really don't know where Kwong was going in some places, if that makes sense. I would definitely aim this towards new adult fantasy. But yeah, really good political book, really good war book. If you really like stories about soldiers, it was excellent, and I do really want to keep going. Something so different, but I listened to again, so audiobook again, was the Dallergut Dream Department Store. This is by, is it Mi Lee? And it was translated by Sandy Jasoon Lee as well. So this book got super popular in Korea, I think, and then it got translated, and then I think became very popular in the West as well. So I suppose it's under that category of like healing fiction a little bit. So the concept of this is that you can go to this department store and buy dreams, and these dreams can help you in ways. I think the concept is that like if you're kind of exhausted from your own life and you want to have like kind of a healing dream, you can go here. So the main character of this is Penny, and she's hired to work in the shop, which was really fun because she got to work in every single department in the store, so you got to see what each floor did and what they specialized in. But yeah, such a fun little book. I think the audiobook was only 6 hours. I think I blasted through it and I really enjoyed it. Definitely very high 4. I gave it a 5 on Goodreads, but really I would say it's like a 4.5, 4.75. I think what I liked about it, it reminded me a little bit of A Series of Unfortunate Events, with how wacky the world is a little bit. But I loved how it would go from Penny to the customers that come in, so it would actually have some chapters of the customers themselves buying the dreams, having the dreams, and like how it helped them or how it helped them get over something. You also have Penny getting to know dream makers as well, so the people who are in charge of creating these for the store, and then Dallergut himself, the store manager. It was just a really fun, cute book, like definitely just very wholesome, cozy fantasy. It was like having like what you think a perfect job would be, where everyone isn't really stressed and everyone's really calm and everyone's really kind. Very good cozy fantasy if you're looking for that. What kind of shocked me from this was how funny it was as well. I thought the humor in it was very on point. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a funny book, but just when there was humor in it, I think it was really well done, well written, just very cozy and wholesome. So if you're looking for something like that, this is definitely a good one to go for. Then I I read Taylor Jenkins Reid new book Atmosphere. This book's going to be very special for me because I read it on holiday. I love reading a book on a holiday, so now the book will always remind you of that holiday. So yeah, I read this when I was on a cruise. It was great. This was a very, very, very strong Taylor Jenkins Reid book. It's a little bit different from her previous releases because it's not interconnected with any of the previous stories. Her past few most recent ones are all set in the same universe, where this is the first time in a while where she's kind of stepped away from that. So this is about Joan. So Joan is this astrophysics professor in this university. It's set in the 1980s. I think her sister lets her know that NASA was seeking the first female astronauts, so she applies and she gets in. A lot of the story is basically Joan training to be an astronaut and the relationship she makes with the fellow astronauts as well. So she definitely has this big like found family and she has this love story as well. It's written so well, of course, Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I really loved how it was doing present day where there was like a crisis basically at NASA and then going back to the past with Joan and her colleagues like going through the training. You're learning all about them and their relationships, and then you're hearing about this like disaster that's happening. So it was just very hard hitting and very exciting, very heart-wrenching. I think for me this was again a really high 4. For me I would say a 4.5. I think sometimes I felt like the characters were maybe slightly unrealistic. Like I would feel like maybe Joan would be the perfect person. I found it very hard to find any flaw with her, and sometimes I feel like Jenkins Reid can do that with her characters sometimes. I think she does create very idealized characters rather than very real characters sometimes. Still really enjoyed this. Joan is also more or less a full-time carer for her niece as well, so that was quite a nice storyline too. Again, quite hard-hitting, but a very nice storyline too. So just a really good historical fiction romance, and I love how she definitely did a lot of research. There was a lot of space jargon, so I think some of it I was like just reading along like okay, yep, but yeah, very strong release from her. So another big release I read was A Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. 5 stars. I loved it. This was my favorite Emily Henry. I actually had lower expectations because I like Emily Henry, but I never like loved her books. Her books were always like high 3s, 4s. I was like, Funny Story was good, People We Meet on Vacation was good, Happy Place I liked as well, but I think this one was definitely the top for me. I have noticed like online, I think people who loved her previous books didn't like this one that much, and then people that were maybe more on the fence with Emily Henry really liked this one. So that is interesting, and I don't really understand why, because I feel like it has a lot of the tropes that Emily Henry kind of does. Each of her books is a romance novel, and you always have these characters. They'll always have like some past trauma, and it's usually from their parents. There'll be some parental relationship kind of explored, I've noticed, and this book has all that as well. But I just think it was very well done, like really well done this time, and I really enjoyed it. The main character of this is Alice, and I really enjoyed her as a main character. She's very much a people person, very bubbly, very hardworking, very girly. I really did enjoy her as main character. Very positive, but has a reason for it as well. She's like a celebrity columnist, and she hunts down Margaret Eves. So she's this long gone into hiding heiress who was like the biggest star in the whole world back in the day, and she wants to tell her story and wants to write her biography. However, she's kind of fighting for the position with Hayden. So Hayden, I think he's already a Pulitzer winner for another celebrity's memoir. Margaret basically gives them both a 1-month trial for both of them to like interview her and write their pieces and give her a draft at the end of the month, and she will decide who will do it, who will get the job and who will get to write the book. So basically this book covers that whole month. You have Alice and Aidan obviously fall for each other as well. I really liked their romance story because it was very, I think, like realistic in places. I loved how it kind of started out as like a bit of a rivalry, but then they start this romance, but there's obviously a lot of things they can't talk about because they both can't talk about their jobs with each other because they're fighting for the same thing, and they both signed these NDAs. So there's obviously tension there. What I really loved is that you get Alice's story and you get Hayden's story, but you also get Margaret's story. So there's a few points of view. There's a few storylines going on here, which I really liked. I loved the ending of this. I thought it was a very strong conclusion to the third act conflict. You know, I thought it was very strong. I loved how everything was quite connected. I loved kind of twisty plots of this book too. It reminded me of a Jenkins Reid book a little bit as well, because you have this story about this super famous person. It was just interesting to read about that. Loved how everything tied together. I did think the ending wrapped things up in a tidy little bow a bit too much, but still loved this book. I really think this was probably definitely my favorite Emily Henry. I think it was really strong. I liked that it was basically, it was a romance novel, but it was, I would say, more so a contemporary book and family story as well as a romance. So I just really enjoyed that. So just a very strong one from her. So I actually picked up then Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and this is actually an adaptation of a stage play. I really liked knowing that going in, because I feel like in my mind's eye when I was reading this, I was imagining it on a stage rather than imagining it as like a movie or TV show, and I think that kind of helped my enjoyment of this. I quite liked this book, but it wasn't like the best thing in the whole world. I give it a 3-star. There's basically 4 parts to this book and 4 different stories. It's all one story that's all connected as well. So you have this cafe and it's in this basement floor, so there's no windows or anything like that, so you can't tell if it's night or day. They've clocks on the walls that all have different times, so you don't know what time it is either. But there's this specific chair that if you sit in it and you're served this special cup of coffee, you can go back to the past. So you can tell the server where you want to go to, and the only catch is you can't leave your chair and you have to get back before the coffee gets cold. So you have to drink all the coffee and then you'll be sent back to present time. So very cool concept. I did find though that the writing was a bit clunky in places. I did find like the rules of the cafe was explained like multiple times, and I can maybe see that being on stage where the characters could be like, okay, make sure you stay in this chair and make sure you're back before the coffee gets cold, and like that's kind of said multiple times. You could see how that would work on stage and not so much in a book. So I do think maybe the adaptation from stage to book didn't work in some places. There was a few comments about women in this book that I felt that were a bit random. Again, still quite liked it. I think I will keep going with the series because I would like to see what would happen, what's going to happen. And I really like the style of it being like divided into kind of short stories, but everything being really connected. However, I did feel like this book was sad for the sake of being sad. Sometimes, you know, when books are written to be like, I'm gonna make the readers cry and I'm gonna come up with this really sad story. So some of them were like, one of them is a relationship breakup, one of them is a man who has dementia, there was one about a sister passing away, and then one about mother never meeting her daughter. So I think there was like a lot of very sad stories that the author really wanted you to be sad about. And I think when it's kind of like a bit too on the nose, again like that, a bit too hard hitting, I can just kind of see through it a little bit, so it makes it not sad for me. I think it was still like a pleasant book to read. Definitely fine. I think if you're going to go for like that kind of cozy healing fiction, I would definitely recommend this a bit more. Still a good book, and I definitely would read the rest of the series. I definitely think it's, again, one of those books that has like very funny moments in it too, so yeah, decent. The last book I have to talk about, this is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. This was his new release. I think this came out in like January, February time, and I only have read Final Girl Support Group. He has a good few books out. He's a very popular author. I did pick this one up and I was very surprised by how much I actually really enjoyed it, despite its subject matter. I remember seeing this and I was like, ugh, like witchcraft is definitely not something I'm keen on as a topic, and I feel like it's brought into so many books that I just have like a bit of fatigue with it, but I thought I would still try this out. It was very brave of Hendrix to do this because this is a very female story. So this is about teenage girls or unwed mothers that had to be sent to a home because they're pregnant. It's set in the turn of 1970s, where teen pregnancy was definitely seen as this like really shameful thing. I think what made this book very strong was the atmosphere of it. So you have women all pregnant and you have the main character Fern. They all get these fake names when they go to the home, so everyone won't know who each other is when they go back to normal life. So you can just tell like the uncomfortableness or the symptoms of being pregnant was very, very evident in this. It's set in Florida where it's really, really hot and humid. The girls basically have to work in the house, and just the depictions of the heat plus pregnancy was just horrible, which of course made for a good horror tone. I think he's good at doing, rather than something being scary, I didn't find this book scary, but you do find it uncomfortable and unsettling. I think he did that really, really well in this book. So Fern is a big reader, and actually this bookmobile comes every so often for them to get books. The librarian actually ends up giving her this, as a grimoire, I suppose. They end up trying to test some of the spells in it, and things take a nasty turn from there, basically. She becomes very close with some of the girls in the house. One of the girls in particular has a very, very, very horrible situation that she does not want to go home to. So a lot of the book is them trying to save Holly, trying to save her from going back to her normal life. And I loved that. I loved like the sisterhood dynamic of it, and this made me cry at the end. But yeah, Grady Hendrix himself, he found out that actually 2 women in his family had to go to these homes themselves, and where the child that they had actually reached out to them in their adult life. So I think he was really compelled to read that, but also make it kind of folklore horror as well, because you have these like witches that live in the woods. So yeah, very hard hitting, a very good horror in terms of feeling unsettled rather than being scary. Really graphic though, so just bear that in mind. It's very graphic in terms of definitely birthing scenes. Basically signing up to this house means you are sending your child off for adoption, so keeping your baby is not really an option here. It was a very good historical fiction because things like this did happen, so it was interesting to read about. But a very well written book. Again, I love how he injects humour into it. It was very, very good. There was a particular scene with Fern towards the end where she's like, she thinks she's all wise and knows everything. The housekeeper is just like, no you don't, shut up. So I think like the humour in it, even though it's a few and far between, I thought it was actually very good as well. Just very uncomfortable. It was horrible to see just all the blame being put on the teenage girls themselves, just these like horrible situation that they were put in. There's a lot of talks about control in here as well, in a lot of ways, and being taken advantage of. Like you have the doctors and nurses and the people who run the house who know what's best for the girls and control everything that they eat and what they do, how they spend their time. So yeah, I think if you can hack kind of like the graphic scenes in this, I think this is a very, very good atmospheric horror book. So yeah, that's everything I read recently. I read quite a bit and I've been talking for a really long time, so I hope this video isn't so long. So if you'd like to subscribe, I do anything book related on this channel, so reading wrap-ups like this one, reading vlogs, unhaul is coming, all that jazz. I'll link all these books that I talked about and my socials in the description. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.